something that really genuinely does have to be experienced. It's the difference between transformation and just shifting the way you think, and that's why we've talked about before, renewing our minds daily, not renewing your heart. Your heart's good if you're born again. Your mind needs to be reminded of how good your heart is, because that's difficult. We're going to go on and look at some other interactions of people who are trying to see Jesus for who he is and having a hard time with it in Matthew 16. So we'll read through and then we'll kind of break it down here. Matthew 16:1, it says, the Pharisees and Sadducees came to Jesus and tested him by asking him to show them a sign from heaven. He replied, when evening comes, I love Jesus. I got to stop there because I want to get through this and then break it down, but just this is great. The Pharisees and Sadducees come to test him and ask him to show them a sign from heaven, and Jesus says, when evening comes, you say, it will be fair weather, for the sky is red in the morning. What? All right, here we go. Today it will be stormy, for the sky is red and overcast. You know how to interpret the appearance of the sky, but you cannot interpret the signs of the times. A wicked and adulterous generation looks for signs, but none will be given it except the sign of Jonah. Then Jesus left. Mic drop. All right. Like he was not entertaining their request at all. Show us a sign. Jesus like, when evening comes, I just love that. When evening comes, you say it'll be fair weather. And he explains to them, look, you guys are missing it. You're looking for the wrong thing. And he goes on, in verse 5, it says, when they went across the lake, the disciples forgot to take bread. Be careful, Jesus said to them. Be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Then they discussed among themselves and said, it's because we didn't bring any bread. He's talking about yeast, bread. And these aren't big boats. Like, they must have been like whispering, like, Jesus thinks like they're having a discussion, and Jesus is aware of their discussion. Jesus asked, you have little faith. Why are you talking among yourselves about having no bread? Do you still not understand? Don't you remember the 5 loaves? This just happened in chapter 15, right before this. He's like, don't you guys remember the 5 loaves that fed the 5,000 and how many basketfuls you gathered? Or the 7 loaves or 4,000 for the 4,000 and how many basketfuls you gathered? How is it you don't understand that it was that? How is it I can't talk. My coffee's kicking in. All right, let me see. How many basketfuls? How is it you don't understand that I was not talking about bread? My eyes aren't working. There we are. But be on your guard against the yeast of the Pharisees and Sadducees. Then they understood that he was not telling them to guard against the yeast used in bread, but against the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. I love that. He's like, okay, be on guard against something that you just kind of witnessed, right? And they're like, oh no, Jesus is upset because we didn't bring bread. You're missing the point here. So we find 2 things happening here. We find 2 different people groups that are struggling to see Jesus for who he is, right? Who's the first group? You can talk. The Pharisees and Sadducees. What are they doing? They're demanding a sign. Do you think that they want Jesus to perform a sign so that they can believe? No. Why? How do we know that? What's the first verse say? They were testing him. There's a movie. I don't think I can say the name of it. It starts with Inglorious and ends with another word. But there's an actor in that movie. There's an actor in that movie that plays a German soldier, and it's one of the most incredible. He's a very good actor, and this actor really made him known. And it's one of the craziest opening scenes I've ever seen in a movie. I like movies, so I really get into that stuff. But he's a very good actor, and it's very chilling to watch him play the character because he's a Nazi and he's very brutal, but very calm through the whole thing. And he was interviewed. Who is it? Christoph Waltz. Incredible actor. He's really good in a bunch of other movies too. But that specific movie, he was interviewed later. I think it was nominated for a bunch of awards and stuff, or he was specifically. And he was asked later, and by someone who was interviewing him. They said, how did you play such a chilling character? How did you tap in to such evil that it was so convincing on screen that we could feel it, like when we watched it? And he said, you missed it. He wasn't evil at all. He thought he was right. He thought he was good. That gives me chills just talking about it. He genuinely thought he was doing something good, and he was doing very evil things. And I think about that because when we get to a place where we see, especially with the Pharisees and Sadducees, and we have preconceived notions about things and we don't allow our minds to be open about them, we can make enemies out of friends. And we can make enemies out of people. And that's not your enemy. People aren't your enemy. But it's easy for us. I made a post about this yesterday or the other day, and immediately somebody said, could you apply this to MAGA and Trump support? I'm like, what are you? No, I mean, where'd you get that out of that? But it's the default setting. Like we go, okay, well, this must mean he's talking about this, right? Not even close to, I wasn't even anywhere near that. But it's because of patterns that we see with whether it's evangelicals or what we see, especially on social media. You can get very blind to the reality of life in social media. Like you can see things on there and you think the world's falling apart. And then I told my kids this the other day. I'm like, I'll get on a plane, I meet 20 different people, and none of this stuff is happening in real life. They're all great. All different races, all different backgrounds. Everything's fine. People get along fine. But if you get on social media, it may not look that way. Partially because of algorithms. We're not going to get into that. But anyway, you see two people groups here. You see one people group of the Pharisees, or a type of person, the Pharisees and Sadducees, that can't see Jesus for who he is because they're looking for something else. What were they looking for at the time? These are religious leaders of the time. They were looking for a king. Was Jesus a king? Yeah. Was he the king they wanted? No. They wanted a sign. He said, look, give us a sign. Where else these are guys that knew the Torah, knew the Old Testament. They understood it. They would have known. When's another sign where we saw God give them a sign? Do you remember? It was the prophets of Baal and Elijah. Y'all remember the whole battle at the fire, and they went back and forth, and Elijah poured water around his and made fun of the other god, said he was off relieving himself or something. They were out there cutting themselves, trying to make their God perform, and God sent fire down, right? And so these Pharisees are looking and saying, okay, we want to see something that proves you are who you say you are. How is that drastically different from Jesus' miracles? Jesus performed miracles all the time. Yeah, Bill? Yeah. And it's because of that same that preconceived understanding of what they wanted a king to look like and how that was going to play out that was stopping them from seeing what was actually happening right in front of them. Jesus' miracles look radically different than what they wanted. What did he do when he performed miracles? He fed people. He healed people. He reached out to the ones that were forgotten and marginalized and brought them in. Yeah, and he did. He said, don't even tell anybody about this. This is not, he never did it to prove to anyone anything. You can see that when he goes out and the devil tempts him. He's like, look, I'm not about this game. I know who I am. I'm not gonna perform for you so that you can believe in me. And that's tough. When we start breaking down modern Christianity and what that looks like and how we have structured some of these things, I don't want to get too far into this, but I've had conversations with other pastors recently, just kind of working through my own personal things. And some of the conversations we've had has helped me and them too, I think, understand how we've kind of started wrong in the way that we do church a lot, because we focus on a singular pastor and like a person. It's more personality driven and pastor driven than the people in the church growing and being disciples. It's just all pushed on one person, and that can be a difficult thing to like figure out because it's just the way it is. And so having some of those conversations and trying to dig into seeing how Jesus did it, it really clarifies to me how real and how genuine and how clear it was that his ministry was to bless people and not like coddle the religious self-righteous. Right. Right. And you can see the contrast between how Jesus reacts to the Pharisees and Sadducees and how he reacts to his disciples, right? So the Pharisees and Sadducees come to Jesus and they test him by asking him, these guys know the scriptures. We've seen them. They're just testing him. They're not trying to see if he's actually going to do it. They want to catch him so that they can prove something, that they're right and he's wrong, basically. He goes on to talk about when evening comes, you can tell, and the signs of the times, we even hear that today. Jesus coined that term back then. You can understand signs because everything was about agriculture and, boats and fishing, so they understood the signs for life. But he's saying you don't even understand, and the only sign I'm going to give you is the sign of Jonah. What was the sign of Jonah? Y'all remember Jonah? Yeah, even before that, though, Jonah was an Israelite that hated non-Israelites, right? He did not like the other people and wanted God to take them out, right? Take out our enemies. These people are our enemies. And God said, no, I want to have mercy on them. And Jonah was like, nah, don't have mercy on them. They're bad. They slap people with fishes. Who's watched VeggieTales? They slap people with fishes. They're bad. Take them out. It's the same thing. He's saying things, and I talk about this all the time, that Jesus loved the Pharisees and Sadducees. I think he did, and he talks in terms that they can understand. They knew what he was talking about. The only sign I'm going to give you is the sign of Jonah. They would have immediately said, Jonah, or they should have done, they didn't like other people coming in on this. They wanted, like Bill was talking about, they wanted a king that was going to come in, take out Rome, make them the basically, let's kill every non-Jew and make this kingdom on earth work. We want another David to come in and take out. We're oppressed by Rome, and we're going to take everyone out until this is going to work. And Jesus is like, you're missing the whole point. This is way bigger than that. This is not the same as it used to be. But what's wild to me is it says Jesus left them and went away. He just walked away from them. He didn't force them to believe. He didn't press them to believe. He didn't have to keep on them. He just walked away. Probably the most difficult thing for me, especially when I've gotten into really deep discussions with people and it gets more argumentative than it does productive, is to walk away. And a lot of times it seems like or feels like I don't care, or that maybe they don't care, or whatever it is. But it's the most productive thing is to take a step away if it gets to a point where you're just arguing because no one's getting anywhere. And I see that when these guys are obviously trying to trap Jesus in something, he catches it and he explains to them in the best way that he can help them understand, and then he walks away. But a radical difference is with his disciples. They're like, he must be talking about bread. But he doesn't jump out of the boat, does he? I mean, he can walk on water, I guess, if he wanted to. He doesn't leave them, does he? What's the difference? What do you think the difference? What's the contrast there? You can talk. Mm-hmm. Did they want to know? I think they did. Did the Pharisees and Sadducees want to know? Not in that instance. I don't think that they did. I think Nick did. Nicodemus. Not Nicholas. Not Nick. Nick knows. Not Nicholas. Nicodemus. Nicodemus did. And I think as evidence how we do see hints of what happened later on with Nicodemus. But the disciples weren't, and we kind of give them a hard time. Like, looking back, we think, God, those dummies, how did they miss it? But how many times have you and I missed it the same way? There's two. So I've got friends who are Christian counselors, and they say that both secular and Christian counselors will use two terms to describe the people that they counsel often, and you may have heard this before. One is a scarcity mindset, and one is an abundance mindset. Y'all ever heard that? The scarcity mindset says these type of people that believe that there are not enough resources, such as money, time, or love, to go around, leading to anxiety and a focus on what is lacking rather than what is available. They fixate on what's missing and what's lacking over what they have. An abundance mindset is a person that believes that there are enough resources, opportunities, and success for everyone, and they fixate on what they do have, and they're grateful for it. Do you see the difference? The same situation, two people can be in the same situation, have a completely different mindset. And I think in this instance, we see that the scarcity mindset can also be more based out of fear. You see here the disciples say, Jesus is upset with us. I didn't do it right. And I'll include myself in this, but how many of you have done that in your Christian life and thought, God's going to be mad at me because I dropped the ball on this. I messed up. The beautiful thing is we see Jesus not walking away from those type of people. He meets them right where they are and says, no, you're missing it. I'm not talking about yeast and bread. I'm talking about the yeast of what the closed-mindedness and hatred and bitterness that the Sadducees and Pharisees have. That's what I'm talking about, not the yeast and the bread. He cares enough to meet you when you care enough to listen. The scarcity mindset, the abundance mindset says, regardless of the situation, I know that God's got me. I recognize that there are things that go on around me. I'm not blind to them. I don't just act like they're not happening, but I recognize that there's something greater in me than what's around me in the world. But there's these two different people are not seeing Jesus right in front of them. It's like their brains are trapped and all they can see is one interpretation of an optical illusion. They're so focused on the one side of it that they can't go to the comments and see there's a rabbit in there. It's not just a duck. He's right in front of him and he's trying to explain who he is and what he's doing, and some people will just refuse to see it. The parable that talks about casting seed and all the frustrations that people can come with the different types of ground that they fall on, and I've heard complete sermon series on each of those different types of ground when I think the whole point was to not worry about the ground as much because you can't make it grow anyway. It's the same thing in saying, listen, throw seeds as far and as wide as you can. Some will grow, some won't. There's lots of reasons. Don't get discouraged. And that's what he goes on to say. Don't get discouraged by the way that these things happen because I'm the only one that can make it grow anyway. It's another thing that's very difficult in a modern day evangelical or church setting is having the freedom to do that and not feel lost in the middle of it all. Because any one of us, I don't want to just speak for myself, but any one of us have no control over what people want to do and what they can and cannot do. I've seen, Bill, you've said many times, I always try to, I don't want to make this like about me or any certain situation, but it's hard to separate some of this stuff because I go through the same things that I'm reading about, and it's just like, there it is. But I know, Bill, over the years, do you remember all the things that you always warned me about each time we would talk about pastoring and different things like that? What was the warning you always gave me that you were concerned about? That I would take on too much and get burned out. And I'll say to you guys, I'm close. I'm close to that point. I'm not there, but I'm at a place specifically with my secular job. I feel like, have you ever seen a dog chase a car over and over and over again, and then it catches it doesn't know what to do with it? That's how I feel. I've worked for the last 2 or 3 years to build these big projects with work, and now I've got 4 or 5 of them going at the same time, and it's forcing me to fly all over the place, and I've never flown so much. I've never gone so much and done so much in my life. And it's good because it's good money for the family, and it's good to produce things, but I've in the process, I've kind of neglected you guys, and you've probably seen me not be as present as I used to be. And I apologize for that. I take full responsibility for it. And I've not been the leader that I feel like I should be here because I've been focused on that. And I'm not trying to like make this sound any other way than just being transparent about it. It's tough, and it's hard for me to like work through, like mentally and in my heart. because I love you guys and I love the church, but I sometimes, no, all the time, take on too much. And for the most part, my personality lends itself to that. I like being busy. I like having projects in the shop. I like doing work. I like doing church stuff. I like doing all this stuff. But I think it's overwhelmed me more recently to where I'm trying to juggle and I'm dropping things. And so I apologize for that to you guys. But it's one of those things that takes time to process and like work through. And so I appreciate your patience with it, but just be praying for me as I go through it, and for everyone else, not just me. But just be praying for me as I go through it, because it can be difficult to navigate. And so it's like when I look at the way that I look at things, I feel like I have this abundance mindset, like everything's going to be great all the time. And I think I'm pretty optimistic as a general rule, and I try to encourage other people to be the same, but sometimes I encourage other people to be more optimistic than I can be, or more have more of that abundance mindset than sometimes I can have, because I'll struggle through things thinking that I've got to take care of it all. And then when I don't, I feel like a failure to at any given moment. I feel like I've just messed everything up all at once. And so we see the two ways people miss Jesus. There's a closed-minded, cynical, preconceived version, because people have an expectation about how God should behave and what Jesus should be and do in their life. When Jesus does not do those things, this cynicism can rise up in us. Have you ever prayed for something and it didn't happen? Once or twice? That's tough. When you're telling other people to pray for a miracle and you're not seeing yours. That's tough. Have you ever felt like God's not listening or like he doesn't understand? Yeah, I think we've all felt that in one way, shape, or form. But when I go back and think about the outlook that I have on life because of the Holy Spirit that's inside of me, I can't help but go back and remember all the things that he's been faithful in. I think of one specific instance where I was very closed-minded, where I had a dead end in my brain, was when we sold our house and we were going to build this barn-dominium in the woods, and we were going to buy like 20 acres. Most of you know this story. That was what was going to happen. And then the land got pulled out from underneath us. We waited 6 months. We were crammed in a little single-wide in Grand Bay. And the girls still say that was the best time of their lives. It was just, we had no responsibilities, and we had all the money from the house. We could just do whatever we wanted. We probably should have stayed there. It might have been great. But I had in my head we were going to have a barn-dominium. Like, we had plans. We had all this stuff. Like, that was what was going to happen. And Brett kept telling me to check next door that this lady had a house with a shop, which is my dream. The barn-dominium was going to have a shop, too. My dream was to have a shop so I could work on cars, not in the dirt on the ground, but with a lift and all the stuff. And Brett kept telling me about it, and I kept saying, yeah, I'm building a barn-dominium in the woods. Thank you. I appreciate your concern. But we're doing this. This is happening. Like, it was a non-negotiable. And then we just kept waiting and waiting and waiting. It's like, I don't know where we're going to live. The housing market was crazy. You couldn't find anything. If you did, they wanted too much for it. And it took several times. Thankfully, Brett reminded me again. I called him about something unrelated, and he said, hey, did you ever call this lady next door? I was like, no. I mean, her house isn't for sale. Like, she's going to sell our house to us. And you guys know, most of you know the story. I called. Like, we were under contract in like 2 days. Had a shop in the back with a lift and a nice house, and it was nicer than we could have expected to get, especially in the market. It never went on the market. We didn't have to pay any realtor. Like, everything just fell right. It was like Lord planned it for me. But I was so focused on my plans that I was missing. It was right in front of me. It was right there the whole time. Right, and our stuff, no lie, our stuff was next door at Brett's shop being stored in his shop. All we had to do was move it next door. It was right there. I passed by the house all the time. That's our house right there. We didn't even know it. And it just blows me away that we can be so focused on what we think is the best that we miss what God has for us, and he's right in front of us. And I think that both the disciples and the Sadducees and Pharisees had their own ideas of what Jesus was supposed to look like and what the kingdom looked like. And Jesus comes and he says, no, I know how kingdoms work on earth, but my kingdom works like this, and he washes their feet. I know how it's been done in the past, and, a king would rise up and take out their enemies, but your enemies aren't people. It's sin, and it's death, and I came to defeat those. And, the disciples are like, we will defend you to the death. And Jesus is like, yeah, but I came to die so that you don't have to. And so it took them a while. They did come around, and they did start to see it. It took them a while to see it, but a lot of people didn't see it and didn't want to see it and refused to see it. And I think that's something in all of our lives where we can kind of take a shift and take a step back and look at things from a new perspective. And it's not easy. A lot of it reveals some of the messed up things in yourself that need to be fixed more than the messed up things in other people that you think they need to fix. And when it kills me when the disciples are like mumbling to themselves, Jesus is angry at us. He thinks we didn't bring this because we didn't bring the bread thing. Have you ever had tension as like with a friend or something? You had tension somewhere, and so you automatically assumed everything they did and said was some like dig at you or some passive aggressive thing, even if it wasn't. But in your mind, you're like, that was directed at me, right? Or vice versa. That's kind of what they're like. They're like, that's it. We didn't bring bread again. This is on us. But that's what they're seeing. And that's how our minds will work when we wrap ourselves up in preconceived notions about situations instead of letting the Lord step in and say, put these glasses on, you idiot. Like, here's my spirit. Let it discern, not you. Not just based on your past experience. And I can tell you, my past experience with people has been pretty terrible. Not all people. Before I got saved, for sure. With manipulation, abuse, all those things. And so I can't place that on people in my life now. But sometimes you fall back into that and you go, okay, well, they're against me and they hate me. And you know what I mean? Have y'all ever had that? You paint this picture like that. You've got to repaint that picture in your mind. And you can't do that on your own without the Holy Spirit. Yeah. Yep. Yep. A couple times. Been there, done that a couple times. There's one of the commentaries when I was reading through Matthew talks about the Pharisees like this, and I like the way he worded it better than I could have, so I'm going to just read his. Let's see if I can zoom in so my eyes can see. So the chief lesson here is that seeing is not believing. The truth is that one does not see until one believes. For the faith that holds the soul also rules one's perception. Matthew paints here a telling picture of sad men who, professing to want evidence, in fact refuse to see the proofs right in front of their eyes. Jesus' miracles, while certainly evidence that God is at work in him, are always healing or saving, worked for the benefit of others. They are never straightforward, overpowering marvels aimed at convincing skeptics. Now listen to this. This is good. Jesus' way is not to force belief through stupendous miracles. His persuasion is roundabout, that it may beget an authentic faith. It is Jesus' habit to hide himself and keep silent before the challenges of unbelief, and his good pleasure to make himself known to a faith already held. In other words, it's not difficult to convince someone you are who you are. Right? Jesus is not trying to produce something that impresses anybody so that they can be convinced that he is Jesus and the Son of God. He is. He's the only one that could lay down his life, and he was the only one that could take it back up. And he did it on our behalf. If like Pam was talking about, if we're more self-referential, we're always going to see things in a way that are limited by our own knowledge and experience. But if we're Christ-referential, we get to tap into the kingdom, which lets us see things at a much larger, gives you a much broader spectrum and a broader perspective of life. In other words, you can look at a situation that looks like it's the end of the world and take a step back and go, okay, that's just because I was focused on me in the situation and not the bigger picture. Does that make sense? The bigger picture is that God may be at work in the situation and you're so caught up in your own feelings that you can't allow him to be. Yeah, that's all I got, and we got 5 minutes. You guys have any questions or any comments? Or anything to add? Yes. Yeah, hindsight's 20/20, right? And it's good. Okay, so that's a perfect point, and it's one of the pages I skipped, so we'll jump back to it real quick. One of the things that Jesus used for the disciples was to remind them of how he was just faithful. Guys, do you remember the bread thing? The miracle thing? I'm that same guy in the boat with you now. Do you think I'm concerned about bread? I just made a bunch of it. Miraculously. Yeah. Yeah. Right, and I always remember Mark saying that we want answers. We want to know why. But if you lose a loved one, is knowing why going to make you miss them any less? You're not. So what you want is answers, but what you need is comfort. And that's what he gives us, is he wraps his arms around you, and he allows you to see that this life isn't it. This isn't the end of things. There's more. So whatever you're going through right now, you're going to continue to live after your physical life is gone, and that should change your perspective on things, on day-to-day life, and how you treat people and how you see situations and understand the perspectives of those things. So yeah, yes. Yeah. Yeah. And you use terms like comfort, and sometimes you think, well, and people that are detractors of grace and understanding what comfort looks like, well, you guys are just being soft and lazy and that kind of thing. You don't understand what comfort looks like. I think about Robert Downey Jr. was talking about how he was having a conversation with, I think, Mel Gibson. He was talking about hugging the cactus. He was just talking about how obstinate and how messed up we were, and you have to hug the ugly part and figure out what's going on inside of you to deal with it. It's the same thing we see, kind of fast forwarding from the snake on the stick to Jesus on the cross. We have to look at how doomed we are without him. We have to look at how terrible we are without him. The best of us, Pharisees and Sadducees, which were way more quote unquote righteous by the law than we will ever be, they still needed to be born again. And we have to look at that to see it's not about me, it's about him. We get to be a part of it. So it's not like we're left out, but it's because he loves us so much that he draws us into his fold and says, look, there's neither Jew nor Gentile, male nor female. You're all invited into this kingdom. People and people groups are not your enemies. You have one command, love me and love your neighbor, and those two are married, and you can't do one without the other. And that's it. Is there more to it? Yeah, there's lots more to it, but they all fall under that umbrella. He said all the laws all the laws and prophets fall under that umbrella. And it's not, oh yeah, I love you. No, it's a love that hurts, and a love that takes time, and a love that breaks and heals and functions and moves, because love is messy, and comfort is messy, and life is messy. Religion is neat and can look neat from the outside, but is like Jesus called them whitewashed tombs. You guys are sure polished on the outside, but you're dead on the inside. You're empty. You're hollow. So, all right, we're 1 minute over now. Yes, Fred? Yes. Yes, Carol broke her hip. I don't have an update, actually. Pam does. Pam's been taking care of her. Yeah. Yeah. She's been chipper every time I talk to her on the phone, and so she's been. Yeah. I'm sure. I'm looking forward to her coming back, because I'm sure she'll want to tell us all about it. We'll have to break out be a whole Sunday. Let her tell us. Get ready. Get ready. All right. So yeah, she's doing. So those that are online, she's doing great. She's chipper. She's got some miracles she's going to tell us about when she comes back. And but yeah, I want to keep praying for her so that she gets healed up. All right, well, let's pray. Father, we just thank you for this day. Lord, I pray that as we leave this place, Lord, that you will highlight the people that we can build up and that we can minister to in our lives outside these doors, because that's where most of the ministry actually happens, is out there. And Lord, so we can just come back and tell each other about it in here and celebrate it. And Lord, also just place people in our lives that will do the same for us, Lord, that will recognize some of the things that we're going through and would be there for us and lift us up and build us up as well. In Jesus' name, amen. You guys have a wonderful day.